Can everybody here in the back? Good evening. We had some requests. People in the back last night were not here, so we're going to try to speak up. Welcome. This meeting is of the Board of Education and Public for the purpose of conducting the school district business. And it's not to be considered a public community meeting. There's time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in agenda items and remarks of the public. I want to say one thing before we get started here. I understand some of you may be here in regards to a rumor or email about Mike Kilroy going to terminate our superintendent tonight. This is not happening. There's nothing on the agenda in that regard, and not even anything about disciplinary action for any employee. This is just a rumor. A little later in the evening, we have a section for public participation. I want to inform you all in advance that we will not engage in responding to questions about personnel in a public meeting. It's not appropriate. Again, we will not be answering questions about rumors about employees. However, we do hope you will stay for the meeting as we do have some good things we're trying to do for the district. We will be discussing starting funds for drama, music, and science. And we always need volunteers to help raise money or to donate. Thank you. Mr. Wilson, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Ford, recorded absent. Mr. Kilroy.
Here.
Mr. Kokowski.
Here.
Dr. Phelps.
Here.
Mr. Thorson.
Here. Would you all be kind enough to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3, approval of the agenda items. Is there a motion to accept? How do you go?
Sir, I'd like to add we had the superintendent discuss the draft of the Burgess and Burgess report, which was the phone survey that was done for the community. We have a draft copy of this, which we just got, which I think the superintendent looking through it and explaining the key points to us would help us to understand it and ultimately the final tabulated results that we're going to get.
Is there a second for that? For adding it to the?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion on it?
I just think in the interest of transparency, which has been a very important thing to our new board and which I commend you all on, I think we should, as quickly as possible, get this into the public domain.
Unfortunately, the report just arrived, whatever little there is of it so far, this afternoon, so I don't think all of us had a chance to even review it. So.
Yeah, and that's why that was my thought, Michael. I actually agree with you. Most of us haven't had a chance to totally digest it, but it's in the superintendent's remarks, so the superintendent would run down and give us the highlights and explain to us so that then later we go back so that we have his perspective on it.
I think you just acknowledge what we have. Jeff and I talked briefly on it because we haven't had a chance to even look at it. I apologize, but we're going to get to it as fast as we can. I think Jeff has a little bit in his comments anyway, right?
I was going to highlight the completion, not the date.
Okay.
And I think there's some important data, Mike, because we're going to discuss also increasing one level of open enrollment. And this report, for instance, shows that a majority of the people in our community do in fact support open enrollment at the higher levels. And that's something that's relevant to the discussion we're going to be having later tonight.
Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to review it. I don't know if anybody else has. Jackie's not here, so let's vote on it then as far as having any further discussion. Yeah. Do we need to do that?
Yes. Mr. Kokowski.
Yes.
Dr. Phelps.
Yes.
Mr. Kilroy.
No.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
Can we email regarding the calamity days, is that being addressed?
I'm going to, that is included, it's something I will discuss in the superintendent's report.
Okay. That's covered. All right, can we have a motion to accept the agenda as modified?
So,
I'll second.
Okay, second.
You made the motion?
Mr. Katowski made the motion and Mr. Thorson seconded.
Mr. Kokowski,
yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Mr. Kilroy,
Yes.
Dr. Phelps.
Yes.
Section 4 of the minutes, we have meeting minutes of January 20th, February 3rd, 5th, 10th, 24th, 10th, and 17th. I apologize for the lateness of this, but we changed the treasurer, a new one coming on board. We're getting ourselves up to snuff here. So we have a motion to accept the minutes for those dates as presented.
I move that we delay the acceptance to the next meeting. And the reason is, Michael, that it's 141 pages and there's a potential error, which I talked to Mr. Wilson about, which may not be an error, but it is an oddity. It could be a $1.2 million error, but it probably isn't. But what it exactly is not, we're not actually certain about it. It may be the $1.2 million STRS payment that is the 10% the teachers pay, because it matches the 122 that we pay, and it looks as if we may have delayed paying that and then paid it in bulk in one payment, where the 122,000 that we pay monthly, and so that could explain it, but it isn't explained, and it's a lot of money, and my thought is wait to approve it, or at least that portion of the treasurer's report until then, and then we have a clean, a clean resolution. We wouldn't have to go back and make any changes.
Is that a treasurer's report? Or
Yeah, that's actually the treasurer's report, not the minutes. So if I'm jumping the gun, Mike, go ahead.
All right, I'd like to get
Is
this.
it in the minutes or is it in the treasurer's?
It is in the minutes. It's the approval of the warrant list at the February 24th meeting. And it was brought to my attention late this afternoon that there appears to be some duplication in two of the checks presented for board approval. Unfortunately, by the time I began to look into it, our staff had gone home for the day, so I need time tomorrow to confirm it. So it's on page 117, which is part of the February 24th minutes.
Okay, shall we just hold the February 24 minutes then and approve the other ones? Okay, why don't we do this? I'll make a motion that we accept all the other minutes besides February 24 for submission, and Dan will follow up with that tomorrow. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Wait a second.
I think it's been seconded.
Thank you.
There's no further discussion. Call the roll then on that.
Mr. Kilroy?
Yes.
Mr. Kokowski?
Yes.
Dr. Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Thorson?
Yes.
Okay, this brings us to item 5, which is remarks to the public. Please note all persons wishing to address the board have a 5-minute limitation. Please state your name, address, and topic. Try to see if you can keep us the help with the time on this one, Dan.
Yes,
I
I'm
appreciate
starting at
it.
7:10, so 7:40 would be.
Okay. Sorry. Did somebody? Can everybody hear or? A little louder. All right.
Hi, my name is Patty Bauer. I live at 7521 Warwick Lane in Chesterland. I'm here to address the board regarding our current open enrollment policy, as well as the recently announced reduction in number of enrollment students this board has voted to accept next year. I attended the board meeting, which entailed discussion about 2 potential candidates for the interim board treasurer position. I was not only disappointed disappointed but totally appalled in the selection process when right there during the meeting, some board members were willing to make their selection by finding out which candidate is more Googleable. Please take no offense, Mr. Wilson. From what I've learned so far, you have advised this board without bias as to the future budget deficit that eliminating or making deductions in open enrollment policy would create. In spite of the exorbitant hourly cost of Mr. Wilson's expertise, the majority of this board voted to eliminate 34 open enrollment seats in this district without having or explaining to the public exactly how they plan to keep this district from succumbing to the red again versus being a district currently working within its budget in the black. I was passionate about getting the last levy passed. Along with other community members, my husband and I incurred a cost of mailing reminder postcards promoting the levy. We have lived here for 18 years and I have supported every single property tax levy. I can tell you now that if this board eliminates the revenue that open enrollment students are providing, I will not support any future levies. I've listened to many of the out-of-district students come before you, and I plead for their continued WestGBrd education. All of those kids seem really great, hardworking, and enthusiastic about the opportunity to attend our district. Why were the open enrollment seats in our district eliminated? What is the benefit of taking such a weak, authoritative action? Why did we hire a top dollar interim treasurer? This board has no regard for his expertise about the revenue we are receiving for the 34 students that the board has decided to simply toss aside. Why is one of the elected board members constantly being disrespected and shut down in front of the people of this community, the people that voted him in his position? Why do some of the members of this board disregard everything our superintendent says? How can this board, with good conscience, implement any type of anti-bullying policies within the district when some of you do nothing but bully your own constituents, particularly the man that we all consider the leader of this district, Mr. Palmer? Mr. Kilroy, Mr. Torrey is not here. Is it not true that Mr. Palmer was selected by the majority of the previous board members, but the two of you were against hiring him? Guess what? I didn't vote for you, Mr. Kilroy, but we don't always get what we want. I am disgusted with the unprofessional mudslinging tactics you use to discredit members of the WestGBrd administration, as well as the former board members. I can only suppose that you may have a perfect candidate in mind for our superintendent position. Please stop the bullying. It's a poor example for the students in this district. The kids you claim to care about so much. We need to be a community that believes in neighbors helping neighbors, people helping people, and families helping families. Do not teach your children that we are better than.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Bob and myself are here to present on behalf of the WestG Field Turf Committee, and we're here to give an update to the community and the board on the progress we've had so far. This is a project that will benefit a wide variety of groups of all ages, specifically football, soccer, band, lacrosse, baseball, and all phys ed classes. We feel this project, that the district itself, if we want to maintain and stay in the top 5%, or try to get to that goal of the top 5% of the state, that not only do you need to do it academically, you definitely have to have the facilities to do it. And that's one of the reasons why we took this project on. We started this project back in August, well, we started fundraising this project back in August of 2013 at the first football game. Many of you here probably, if you attended any of the games, saw the tent that we had up. We started to raise funds for the new playing surface for Hall Field, a new front entrance to the stadium, and to renovate the bathrooms. Today we're here to talk about phase 1 of the project, which is just the turf field. Okay. As of today, we have commitments of $385,000 of cash, and that is in-kind and pledged donations. We can start looking at the pie chart. I think we handed one out to all of you guys there. Okay. Leaving us right now $232,000 remaining that needs to be raised. We're currently working with many individuals and other businesses on additional donations. There's 3 other areas of additional funding that we are looking at right now, and these are areas that one is goalposts, the other is paving the D end parts of the end zone. So if you look at the field as an oval like this, they refer to those spots here as the Ds. Okay, and then there's an engineering cost for design, permitting, and survey and soil boring. Okay, currently right now there's a number on that we're definitely looking at. Some in-kind donations and things like that, but it could potentially be $70,000. Okay. We are currently working with a WestGBrd graduate right now who is helping us with a lot of the engineering costs. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Bob.
So in the next few weeks, the WestG Turf Committee is going to put a full court press on to try and raise the money. As you know, the deadline is approaching for us to let some type of contract go to get this project done this year. So there's going to be an article in the Chesterfield News. If everybody could look, and anybody that wants to donate, please contact us. So the committee and the administration have met with three different contractors to try to get that lined up, to get the project moving. And we have done our best to try to secure funding, and we're going to continue to secure funding, but the project is not going to move forward probably without the board's help. So in the next few weeks, we're going to be in contact with you to go over that too. That's what we have to say.
Thank you very much. Well-deserved applause. These guys are working very, very hard to raise monies for our district. This is a very good cause. And they're right. We're going to be a top 5% district. That means the whole district. That's our academics, it's our sports, it's our extracurriculars, etc. It's got to be a full court press. I guess I let them go before I wanted to. But Tim or Bob, when do you think we need to try to get stuff out to bid in order to make the breaking ground? And how long does that take? What is that part of it?
Soon. We have been proceeding forward in terms of assuming that we were going to be that we would be reaching the goal, which means we've been in contact with 3 different turf companies and have kind of narrowed the selection. Again, a lot of this has been done with the help of somebody who's assisted on 15 different fields. Currently, he's working at it on, I very knowledgeable, and he's helped us to kind of go through some of the, he's an engineer by trade, and kind of what the typical, what we would need from not only state term, but also with its in-kind and different defendant involved in both situations. So to answer that, Mike, I could give you a much better timeline, but we are at a point where things would need to be just because of probably going to take at least a month or some of that stuff to get out.
But once we break ground, how long is it anticipated?
It's about 8 weeks.
8 weeks.
Yes, is what we would anticipate from breaking ground to having field installed. And that would, that again is also going to be assuming that we're not in a 3 weeks of straight rain.
Right.
Okay? I mean, that's certainly, and our goal was to actually start, breaking ground after the state track meet, which, because I know we're going to have people that are going to be qualified for the state track meet. So, which I haven't actually looked up that date. I believe it is one of the first weekends in June. So, we would want the field would be playable for the 2014 football season.
Okay. Anybody got any questions they'd like to ask the two representatives from the Turf Commission while we have them here? If anybody would like to get in contact with them and isn't quite sure how, please feel free to contact board members. We'll get email addresses out or phone, whatever you guys have.
It's all on the school website.
Okay. Front page under what, the left side Turf Committee or something like that?
Yes.
Okay. Go to the home page, click on the Turf Committee. Okay. Thank you. Thank you again. Gentleman in the back.
Good evening, board. My name is Paul Separati, and I'm a resident. I'm passionate about the open enrollment issue here. Recently, in the last election, there was an overwhelming response to electing Dr. Phelps and Mr. Thorson, and there was a reason for that. It's my belief that the community is behind a movement to stop the open enrollment process. I believe it is a strong movement, more so than to be the representative or what the polling that went out. The reason why a lot of people are passionate, especially me, is when we moved to this area, a lot of us made sacrifices. When you pick an area to reside, that area that you reside has to do with the school system. It's one of the #1 reasons why you move to a community. And you move there for that school system. But you have to work hard, you have to make sacrifices. To allow other children to come from other areas that are neighboring communities, that are in areas that are 15, 20 miles away, it's just not fair. Besides not being fair, it doesn't make economical sense. It's not working within needs, it's not working within the budgets. I understand that there is some revenue that can be raised and can be saved, but overall, I think that this is a mistake, and I think that if this continues on, the community is going to work hard to replace board members that are going to support the positions of the residents. I understand, and I am for being a good neighbor and allowing perhaps a common courtesy or a common ground of maybe our neighboring communities to participate in an open enrollment program. But that's different than just allowing a pure open enrollment. That's substantially different. I grew up in Calamity, and in the 70s we dealt with forced busing. And I see this as a form of busing in a different sheep's clothing. And that's another reason why I am against this. So I just wanted to speak my mind and let the community and let the board know where I think the silent majority of this community is at. That's all I can say.
I don't know if everybody can hear me. I wanted to wait on understand this comment until I heard a pro and a con for open enrollment. And my comment is, if everybody can hear me, is the board is made to be the referee in the community, okay, between the people who are for open enrollment and the people who are against open enrollment. Now you heard two people present their sides, and I want the students in here to hear that one side was presented to the board very vehemently. Spock was speaking to people who are on the school board who are trying to make the right decision, basically attacking the board. Okay, one side was offering information. So if you're going to a basketball game, students, and the referee makes a good call or a bad call, what do you do? Do you boo the referee? Okay? We're here trying to do our best job, and the analogy to me is we're sitting here trying to weigh two difficult things. When Burgess and Burgess comes, I can almost guarantee you before the report came, it was going to be pretty close. When Mr. Palmer gives us some information, believe me, it's going to be pretty close. Because we saw 300 people come here last fall from a meeting of 5 people. So people have extreme viewed opinions. And we're not trying to be the bad guys, but we're trying to weigh all the opinions and be somewhat of the referee to make the best decision. But does that mean that people write mean things about us? Does that mean that people attack us without knowing all the facts? So I just want the students to understand that when you attack the referee, you're bullying, because that's what attacking somebody who's trying to make an honest decision is. So bullying has a lot of different definitions, and I know I heard tonight that the board was, some people on the board were accused of bullying other people. You know, when things get presented to us, students, please, again, think of the analogy of the referee. Thank you. Yes. Hey, right.
Hi, I'm Bob Bauer, Chillicothe Road, 1262 Chillicothe. The comment that I wanted to make is I just wanted to let people know that I was part of the phone survey that was done, and I'm against open enrollment, but the way that phone survey was presented to me, it was amazing how biased it was. Basically saying, do you like money? Yeah, I like money. Well, then you're for open enrollment. It's, do you like a school that's 21st century capable? Well, yeah, well, then you're for open enrollment. Extremely biased questions. I'd like to know who presented that. I'd like the board to have a copy of what the pollers told people. I think it's very important because it's obvious, that the results are going to be extremely, it's going to look like everybody is for open enrollment the way the questions were proposed. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Mike, you and Jackie reviewed those questions before they went out?
Yes.
The questions or the comments that were around the questions?
No, the questions themselves that were asked.
They actually made a presentation to us just before the polling, questions that they had put together based upon looking at newspapers and things of that ilk. And I don't want to put words into their mouth, but when you do polling, there's negative polling or positive polling, and the tone, you elicit more quantifiable and verifiable responses if you're just nice and how it's phrased. Now, some that may say, well, that's biased or whatever, versus coming out in negative polling. They don't believe in negative polling, that's the answer is. So to some that may have appeared to be skewed or biased, but that is definitely the factor. That's how they kind of explained it to us, as why certain questions are not exactly negative, but they may appear more positive. Because if people are really stringently against something, then they'll strike out at it or comment on it. So that's what they shared with us.
Well, the questions were like, do you approve of the principles?
the principal. Where do you approve the principal? Well, I told her, I said, there's 4 of them. You know, well, she just, repeat. It's like questions that didn't make a lot of sense. It seemed like there wasn't very much information behind it. And 21st century prepared schools? I mean, I'm not really sure what they're, of course we'd like that. So, okay. Thank you.
Gentleman right here, baseball cap.
Hi, my name is Van First. I'm a resident here of Westwind. Man First. Oh, okay. First of all, I'd like to say that I believe that the board was voted out last time specifically because of this open enrollment issue. Secondly, I believe that this issue should be voted on by our community. It should not be decided by our board. Third of all, I believe that our schools are too spread out, that we should be consolidated, and we have enough room in our other buildings. I know what it costs to run a building and facility maintenance. And is it possible that if we keep open enrollment, that we can charge a fee to all these students? We need $200,000 for the field. Can we charge $1,000 a person? Pay for that? I mean, shouldn't these kids? This is our community. We work hard, made sacrifices to come to this community. Why are we letting people come and use our facilities and not paying for it? That's it. I just think we should be voting on this as a community. It shouldn't be decided with the board or a survey that's obviously biased. Thank you.
Didn't get a phone call. So, I mean, so you're asking a lot of people, because the comment was made that the majority of the people were for open enrollment. I don't know what these people have or whatnot on the open enrollment thing, but I think that needs to be kind of brought into consideration that some of the people out there may be for it, may not be for it. And I just wanted to see. As well as on the comment of Dr. Phelps, I mean, I know the man is a personal person as well as a professional, and he's not somebody that bullies, and I know he cares for our kids in our community.
Just a quick comment, a couple of comments on the survey. As I understand, the way it was done was it was divided up by the voter registration, so there are more voters in Chesterland, so they did that based on percentage, and then the Burgess & Burgess outsourced it to a professional phone polling company, and I do apologize for those the very first night. As soon as we started getting some calls that some people were getting multiple calls, we got right on it to try to stop that, and we're not quite sure where the glitch was, but Burgess & Burgess assured us that it was outsourced to a professional telephone calling agency that they've used in the past. And then the next night, I didn't receive, because the good news is any phone calls with duplicity or anything going on. So I think, I'm sorry you got multiple phone calls. I did have a couple people call me and apologize for anybody else. But not everybody in the district was getting a phone call. We were going to have a chance it might be, but that's what that was about. Is there anything I missed on that, Jim?
That sums it up, not go through pieces again.
Okay.
And if I may, I wanted to comment to Matt's question. I think a lot of people here would love to see this on a ballot, correct?
Yes.
We can't. We'd love to do that. It would make it very easy for us to do that. It would make our job extremely, we'd put it out to you. The only way that we could put it on the ballot is to say, are you for an increase to offset that revenue? Yes. And if you're not, then I guess you're for open enrollment. And I don't know that that would be a clear yes or no to open enrollment either. We can't put on a ballot something that says, are you for or against it? We've been advised by our attorney we can't do that. And we brought that up in other meetings. So for some people that are maybe just hearing this for the first time, oh my gosh, it'd be great to put that on the ballot and get that over once and for all. But it's not something that's available to us. So that's why we're not doing it.
I have talked to the Board of Elections and asked them, they said, you can't put a survey on it. So then they gave me to the head of the area, and he said, no, you can't do that. Again, the only thing that we're thinking of that might be a way of trying to test the theory would be to say, and I think Dan Wilson, as a matter of fact, is going to talk to us a little bit later about some of the numbers. What would happen if we had a levy, one of our renewals that's coming up, and possibly have an increased amount to cover whatever shortage there would be if you went from total open enrollment to, say, contiguous, and then everybody could get out and vote and say, I stand for that, and if they don't, then it's because they don't. And that's the only thing we can figure at this point here as a possibility, but we have to find out. Dan's going to try to present something a little later as far as when are the renewals coming up. We need them to pass, thank you very much. But what do we need to do if we're going to have a renewal plus a little extra, if that's the way we go? When can you do that, and how does it work? So you can't just put it on and say, here's a survey. The Board of Elections wouldn't do that. That's what I've been told. How many time?
3 minutes.
We have a 3-minute slot. Howard, would you like to? I'm sorry. I just asked for Howard. I apologize.
Howard Shaker from Russell. I think what's going on is going to backfire on everybody. If you can't figure out some way to read the pulse of the community, the only choice people who do not want open enrollment will have is to vote down every school levy. Now, I don't like open enrollment. The only way I've always supported every school levy, but the only way I have to tell you that is to campaign with a lot of other people who are out here to defund the schools. That's what's going to happen. So I think it's in your best interest to find out some way to accurately gauge what's going on here. What the taxpayers want, that's how this country works. Now, I know that you're correct, there can be a vote. But the only vote that we can have is to vote down all the school levies until you get the message. Thank you.
Just real quick.
Christy Craig, I live on Mulberry. Howard, you're already deep on your schools. Okay? If you don't start supporting school levies, your school district's not going to survive. So open enrollment or not, if everybody does, you're all excited to be here. It's time to go and, support your schools, support your boards, support your teachers who work their butts off every day for your kids. Stop complaining.
Please,
Get out there.
ma'am, I'm sorry. That address is not.
Sorry. Oh, also, I want to make sure when we get farther down into your report, you're talking about these bylaws again on here, and the third time you're going to be speaking about these bylaws for number, where is it? 131, I believe.
Were we waiting readings?
Where you have the...
Were we waiting 3 readings of the reports?
Sorry. policy committees, 0124 and 0131. I'm hoping that everybody's following the sunshine laws, making sure that they're cooperating with the Ohio Revised Code, and making sure that when you make these decisions about taking responsibilities away from your superintendent and putting it onto your board president, that's a touchy subject. That's putting a lot of power into the position of one person who supposedly you chose and then putting it with somebody else. I question why some of this change in the wording has to be done. I also question, if you're following, well, she's not here today, but she was talking about all these other school districts that she was looking at, and I was looking at them too. And I don't know if it's exactly as she projected it, because we weren't handed the information directly. But when I reviewed it, it's kind of questionable, some of the things. So I'm just hoping that you follow the sunshine laws and you're following the Ohio Revised Code so that you don't get caught in a bad way.
We do.
Or maybe not.
Okay, so that's our time for remarks from the public. New business. We have discussion of possible new funds. You've all heard we had a turf committee come and speak. We're going to have some discussions on trying to create some other funds. Give people an opportunity, a different way of supporting our district. Any of you that have ever gone to Lindsay or Westwood or seen any of the little plays there or the plays at the high school, we have a wonderful, wonderful drama department. We have a fantastic music program here, band. In this day and age, I think science and math are areas we see STEM schools, all these other projects out there. And now we have a turf committee that's out trying to support our school by raising money for turf. In the past, we have done this in the past. We had a tech fund trying to support technology. Donations by private individuals started that one. Many public entities raise money. So I just think it's an area where we can, with the use of alumni department or whatever, support our school in different areas that they could use the extra help.
Is this an area where we're having some discussion on it?
Yep.
What do you envision that fund including? I mean, what kind of budget would oversee that, and what would that budget be used for?
Well, we try to raise money, so it's not like we should make a budget for it. This one here is just extra funds. Talking to individuals, I'm talking to Dan, for example, if you're going to raise money for your district, it's nice to have targets. There's certain particular projects to go on. Just recently had a Westwood's drama presentation, The Jungle Book, which was, for those of you who missed it, it was out of this world. It was absolutely fantastic. And we're talking to somebody who wanted to know how to support the school. Do we have any particular things that they could support as a private donor? So we have a tech fund, and I started to mention the possibility of having a drama fund. And they were very excited about being able to directly support the school in particular areas. If anybody has any other areas that they would like to bring up as far as what to establish a fund in, or
You've talked to Mr. Pendersky about this, right? Or not? Oh, because what I'm wondering is, can we as a school accept money that's specified for certain use? We're allowed to do that, or not?
Yes.
That's what I was looking at. So you know this already, right?
We actually have an account. We did it for the smart boards when I raised money for that. And then we have the iPads. We actually had an account specifically designated for that. Oftentimes, if people donate money, it doesn't have to be, I learned a long time ago, it doesn't necessarily have to go for the project that you want. It's a donation to the school. However, if you donate to the school specifically for something, then the school has the right to say, no, we don't want it. What we did at the time was you set up a fund specifically for the project, and you can make donations to that. So we've done that twice.
Mr. Pugger's, are we obligated to use money that's donated to us for the purpose that a donor requests?
In addition to the general fund, which is what you typically expend, the auditor state allows you, through the treasurer's office, to create what's called special funds. A designated purpose for the expenditure as part of that fund. So you are allowed to accept as part of a special fund donations for a predetermined purpose as approved by the auditor state. Yes.
So would it just be sort of a bookkeeping thing to set these up then? It's not a...
No, actually, it's more complicated than that. Mr. Wilson, I think we're going to talk about that. He's had some experience as well. You need permission in advance for the creation of a fund. The Board of Education must create the fund. You should have an intended purpose for the proceeds of the fund. And of course, there's no commingling between the funds of the special fund and the general operational fund of the school district.
Is a predetermined purpose like, does it have to be as specific as the stage curtain, or is it to further, say, a music program or drama program?
Maybe something in between. You wouldn't want to, for example, purchase athletic equipment for money that was clearly intended to be donated for purposes of the thespian and the drama group. You can, however, put together creatively, how you're going to spend money for the benefit of the drama program. You would not have to restrict yourself to that specific a topic as curtains, but on the other hand, you'd want to make sure that the curtains are going to be approved as an expenditure by the auditor of state before you make such a purchase.
How long does it take to get that approved? Like if we set this fund up today, for several areas.
I guess I'll defer. We send a letter to the auditor of state.
Typically within 30 days.
That's great. That's great.
What we did with the tech fund was, I think at the time it was said, no more than one half could be allocated annually. That way, at the first half, we got half of a half, half of a quarter. Otherwise, it could shoot up very quickly. We could put some limitations that would say no more than a third of any of these funds, or except for the church fund, which we want to have for the church project. But we have a science fund, a drama fund, and a music fund, or whatever else fund. No more than a third to be allocatable each year to promote sciences, or to promote drama, or to promote music within the district. So that way the fund has a little bit of life to it.
Yeah. How technical a resolution do we need to do this? Do we just say we set up these funds, or do we have to actually go through to make the resolution on part of the board?
I would recommend that guarantee as much as possible that's approved by the auditor of state. That'd be a specific resolution. The intended purpose, the intended time frame for the expenditures. I think if you're allowed to go forward, the community knows what they're actually donating for, and the auditor of state has an opportunity to approve it without going back and forth. So something more than a resolution to create a science fund would be what I'd recommend.
So would it be appropriate to have Dan Wilson and Dan Thorson take a look at and work on the wording of the resolution that would be presented to the board?
Yes, and do we have some potential fund areas that we'd like to at least be considering for this thing? Off the top of my head, again, as I said, the drama, the music, science, we've got the turf fund, the turf fund we need to address. I think Dan anyway, but does anybody else have another area that they think would warrant having a fund?
I think initially maybe start small so that we can concentrate and pull some money into these funds and build a volunteer base.
All right, so shall we just turn it over to Dan Wilson and to Mr. Thorson?
Well, I'll note in the minutes as being referred to the Finance Committee to develop purposes for special funds, initially those listed in the agenda and any others that are identified. And then bring that back to the board.
Yeah, then we can bring it back and then see, the rest of the board. We'll do some legwork.
Okay, let's do that. Thank you. That takes us to our informative reports. First one is the superintendent's report.
Thank you. The first report, and in the report I provided to the board, I indicated that based on conversations I had with Burgess and Burgess leading up to the time of this report, that I was expecting to have information, a full report on the community survey, not just the community survey, but all the facets of that survey that we used through Burgess and Burgess at our April meeting, and I think that is still within our plans. However, based on conversation tonight, I will start and highlight some of the information, repeating some that Mr. Gilroy mentioned earlier, but going into it a little bit more. Thursday and March 20th, Friday, March 21st, a firm by the name of AMM, which is one of the nation's most comprehensive and well-respected phone survey firms, was contracted to conduct a phone survey of our community. Based on input from myself as well as board members following that, as Mr. Kilroy mentioned earlier, that survey tool was refined to come up with the survey that was used going out. There were 532 completed surveys for our community, which is over the sampling size expected or required for valid use of the data. The data came back at with the numbers we used, or that were used, a 95% confidence level based on sample size and our community size. The firm also used what's called stratified sampling, and Mr. Kilroy alluded to this earlier, where based on the November 2012 gubernatorial elections, the polls, or the surveys rather, were portioned out to areas of our community based on the representation of votes from the 2012 election, or November 2012, I should say, not necessarily the gubernatorial, but the November 12 election. That is a sampling method used to ensure that the people responding in the survey, or to help ensure that the people responding in the survey are reflective of the people who typically vote in our community, and is reflective of all the subpopulations of West Geauga Local School District. Overall, our district has a high number of excellent and good. About 82% of our community was very satisfied with the overall education provided by our district, with a very small portion, about 7%, saying only fair or poor. A high portion, 96% of those surveyed, strongly agreed with the concept that good school districts impact the value of homes. That was one of the other questions. Our teachers, as was alluded to by one of our public remarks, teachers received an overall positive rating of 74%. And then there were questions asked moving forward about the building principals with 56%, then questions asking about district administration and the performance of the board as well. When it came to open enrollment, which was one of the questions that was specifically put out there, an overwhelming majority, 90.4% of those surveyed, including 97% of parents and 88% of non-parents, acknowledged awareness of open enrollment. So that many people aren't under a rock in our community. As we know, it's been a very widely discussed topic, and it's one that there's a lot of awareness. The strong majority, 62.6%, indicated a strong support or moderate support of open enrollment, with 30.8% opposed. There were questions about what are good reasons for open enrollment, and there were a variety of support levels throughout that. The most positive, least supported reasons for open enrollment were offsetting residential enrollment declines and prevention of the district having to seek additional levy monies. Those statements that were least supported were that 80% of the schools statewide had open enrollment, that teachers supported open enrollment, and that our state tests continue to improve. I'm trying to see what other big factors there are. And I apologize for not having this broken down, but heading into tonight, as Mr. Gilroy mentioned, this was not a planned presentation, so I'm trying to highlight some items off of the email I received. Over 53% of participants strongly disagree or disagree that open enrollment is causing decline in property values. The other concern that was expressed throughout community input is it's unfair that open enrollment students do not pay local property taxes, was divided with 48% on the agree or strongly agree side and 43% on the disagree side of that. And I apologize, remember when I'm saying strongly agree or agree, you're talking about a continuum of points on that survey. So strongly agree or agree have been grouped along with strongly disagree or disagree as the options. The board, or there was a closely divided reaction to the new grade level caps. 44% of those surveyed disagreed with the change, and 41% agreed. And that probably sums it up. I guess one last number, that 38.7% of those who want to continue, those are probably the biggest numbers. I think it's fair to say that, this is preliminary data. I've given you a report that is off the cuff. I've had the report since last night and am sharing what I have at this point. We will be bringing in the individuals from Burgess & Burgess who conducted the research with our stakeholder group, with our staff, and with our students, and they'll be making a complete report at a meeting in April. So that's probably the biggest part on the community survey I could give at this time.
Jeff, can I ask, how many people did not fill out or refuse to fill out? Because I know they said it was statistically significant, but how many people, I think it was over 2,000? 2,100. 2,100 did not fill it out or declined to?
Remember, did not reply to a phone survey. I don't want to say fill out, but chose not to respond.
Right, they chose not to respond. So my three comments are, number one, that was a huge number that chose not to respond. Number two, if the question was written or worded as 30.8% disagreed with open enrollment, and they put in there the strong majority was 62.6%. And I believe it's somewhere, that included strongly agree and moderately agree. Okay, so if 30% disagree and the board is taking a position of basically moderately agreeing by not getting rid of open enrollment, then the board is basically in the position of supporting open enrollment. When you look at the disagree and the agree with the caps, they're both the same number. So basically 44% disagree with what we did, 41% agree with what we did. So that's what I was mentioning earlier about being the referee, okay? We have huge numbers here, huge numbers here, and this is what the survey shows, and this is what I would have expected it to show. I wouldn't have expected it to show 90-10. I wouldn't have expected it to show. I was surprised how close it was to 50-50, to be honest. I mean, this is preliminary, but I think the community needs to know that this is not 80-20. It is not 90-10. There's 41% of people who agree with what we did, but there's a lot of vocal people on both sides of the fence. We're in, if you look at what we did, we're basically in the moderately agree because we didn't remove open enrollment. We kept it and we decreased the number a little bit. So I believe we're probably in that 30 or 40% of that chunk. So when people get this information, we have to highlight those numbers. This is not a 90-10. Again, this is pretty close to 50-50. And I think when you hear, if we use our applause meter here, I bet you if we had an applause meter and I said for open enrollment, I would probably get the same noise as I get against it. And one of the emails to me once said I should use that as a valid method to make my decision to decide on open enrollment. So I just want you to highlight that those we'll all have the whole thing. And when I started as a board member, you know, Mr. Palmer told me that we would have this report. Well, this report, again, I read it last night, 2 days before we're supposed to make a final decision on open enrollment. Okay, April 1st was the cutoff. So he and I talked about it January, we talked about it February. So, and we knew this was an issue in October. We knew this was an issue after the vote because probably 60% of the people voted basically against kind of open enrollment because they removed 2 people who were for open enrollment. I mean, the votes were huge, and the main issues were kind of open enrollment. I mean, you know, it wasn't exactly open enrollment, but it was part of the issue. I mean, implied in the vote. So I think, you know, I think we have to factor all those things in. This report would have been great to have had 3 months ago. We could have had a lot of discussion on this. We're having it tonight.
I would just make one comment. In talking to Burgess and Burgess, I asked them when they were first contacted to do something. And they told me they weren't contacted until the middle of November. So that was post-election. So we had discussions about this in October. There was a very lively discussion and meetings, and it wasn't until after the election that the old board decided, well, I guess we ought to have a survey. So I just, for the record, I find that just a little peculiar that after the election, a survey was.
Well, actually, Mike, the superintendent initiated the board, and there was power to spend up to $20,000. The board never approved this. This was not a board action. This was commenced solely on discretion and the initiative of the superintendent. And I think we owe the thanks for it. It's something that...
No, I was going to say, the timing, according to Burgess and Burgess, that was in the meeting, unfortunately. Right. I was there, Jackie was there, and they said they were first contacted mid-November.
Right.
Just so people know.
Right. I think the survey is very valuable, so I agree. I commend Mr. Palmer for initiating the process. My trouble is getting the results the night before we were supposed to make a really big decision. And one of the comments that people kept saying was that we should have waited for the report. So we would have waited for tonight to make our decision for tomorrow. And later on in the meeting, there'll be some things that I'm going to bring up about open enrollment because I've already thought some things. But I still am very firm on the idea that the cards were stacked against us from the beginning, that this information did not get, it's what I was looking for. I wouldn't base my whole opinion on it, but I really think it should have been here 2 months ago. It's a major decision, and for us to vote on it, when I was really skeptical we would ever get it before I came go first, to be honest. I mean, I'm shocked it showed up today, but I was very skeptical. You know, because there was never a timeline. It was never said we would have this on March 31st, or March 30th, or March 20th. It would come someday. And it came.
Yeah. Well, I think this is really very illuminating because, you know, what we're seeing with the division in the community, we're seeing that a lot of people, you know, who are passionate about this, are really acting in good faith. They're following their beliefs, and when they say they believe the community is behind them, they believe that because a big chunk of the community is behind them. And, you know, it means that we have to vote when we determine open enrollment. We have to use our judgment as individuals because with the divided community, we're not going to please everybody. We have to do what we feel as individuals is best for the community, best for the schools, and it serves the long-term interests of these schools and their students. So, you know, it just puts the onus on us. It means it's really our responsibility as a board to make these decisions.
Thank you. Jeff, next area.
Yes, to continue. A couple of things I would just add on this. The finalization of using Burgess & Burgess happened just before Christmas. The first steps of their interviewing of stakeholders occurred right around Christmas. And as Dr. Phelps said, nowhere And was there an indication as to when the phone survey was going to be able to be completed? Because they were using all the pieces of the other survey points, if you will, to develop the survey tool. In 2 board meetings, I made recommendations or suggestions to the board that we move forward with lower caps while we waited for the survey. And that's kind of where that kind of played out. But moving along, updating on field testing, as you've probably read in the papers, park field testing is beginning or has begun in districts across the state, dating back to last week. I just want to take a moment to publicly thank our teachers, our building administrators, central office staff, our students who were involved, our technology department for all the work in getting everything laid out. While it isn't giving us all the data we'd like to have about students and how they're performing, the big part of this field testing is it gives our students exposure to the testing techniques that they're going to be responsible for in the future. And it allows us a chance to work the kinks out as far as the process. So thank you all for, many of you who are involved out here, and I appreciate basically the spring training, as I put in my report, for next generation testing and your work in doing that. Negotiations will be coming up. We will be bargaining tomorrow with our teachers union, and we're finalizing dates with our classified staff for the near future. Looking forward to a productive set of discussions with a group of people who are dedicated to their profession, and we expect that to go well, and appreciate the discussions we've had up to this point. Also want to bring mention that our next Senior Citizens Appreciation Dinner will be May 7th at 4:30, again at the high school. We did it last year at the high school instead of here. Want to give thanks to Chesterland Rotary for their help in doing that. They'll be providing valet parking again for our seniors to help with the walk. And hopefully we can get some of our student groups from the high school involved in that as well. So looking forward to that on May 7th. The other items that I have just in brief discussion, Calamity Day discussion. We've had ongoing discussions with both our classified staff and certified staff, as well as we're moving forward with this. As we talked about at the last board meeting, the process that we are looking at, that we discussed at the last meeting, was extending the school year by 1 day to Thursday, and then looking at some combination of, I'll call it the alternative makeup days, blizzard bags, or extended hours for the 3 days that we need to make up, because we need to make up 4. Based on discussions, something that's taken a little bit of traction here and is kind of, there's a couple of things that are working through the process here. We've also talked about the concept of extending students to that Friday, and then working with our teaching staff and things like that, and others, so that we don't necessarily have to bring them back the following week for a full day, trying to be a little bit creative with that. We're looking at that. We had some discussions with the union leadership on that concept. That would allow us 2 days of either extending days or blizzard bags. And the part that's kind of holding us up right now, and due to some personal issues, a death of someone, our OEA representative has not been available for determination, because, as I mentioned in my communication to the board, there's some discussion as to, for blizzard bags to be used, we have to have association approval to move forward by state law. So that's the piece that's kind of on hold right now, and we're trying to figure out how we can work through that. I will have more information on that tomorrow, as we'll be spending a full day together with union leaders and our OEA rep tomorrow as we negotiate. So we're looking at it. We have some options on the table. We know that information needs to come out very soon and be approved very soon, and that is certainly our interest in getting that done. The final thing I would mention is regarding our calendar next year, and there's been some clarification of the law that we had worked under a while, the assumption that any contracts taking effect on July 1 of 2014 had to make the transition from days to hours of minimum days to minimum hours of instruction. And actually what the law says, and I verified this through a couple of sources, including Mr. Wigurski, but the law actually says a collective bargaining agreement agreed to prior to July 1 does not need to make the transition. So we could follow the same calendar concept as long as our negotiations are settled before July 1. So that puts a different spin on it, because the change otherwise requires public hearings, requires meetings with your parochial schools that you serve, etc. So that is an item in negotiations, and we'll be dealing with that. But the law has been clarified that the initial interpretation most districts have been working towards is not the way the law actually was recorded. That summarizes.
Just one question on the Calamity days, Mr. Palmer. I think some people have questioned like when the decision will be made. So do we have like a timeline of exactly we will have a decision made by? Because I think people send emails saying.
Yeah, there's no doubt we need to have something done in April, and the question will become. Right now our April board meeting, our only April board meeting is scheduled for late in the month. I don't know if there will be a special, but we'll have I'll have more information tomorrow, and if we can get some movement on that yet, in the very near future, if there isn't a special meeting called, I may request that there's just a special meeting to address that singular issue to allow the time. But we're still really focused on not bringing anybody in that second full week of June, which was one of the targets that we kind of talked about last meeting. But yeah, there's no doubt, Dr. Phelps, that this is a situation that needs to be resolved quickly. Spring break and timing of those things didn't help us get to this. I thought we could, but there's some questions that are still looking at.
Thank you.
Well, the questions got our directors' reports. Any directors' reports?
Directors, any highlights?
Okay. Principals' reports.
Good evening, everyone. The high school, a lot of notes to talk about here this evening concerning the high school, and a lot of which are congratulatory remarks. Just this past week, I should say before spring break, we've had 41 students, probably the biggest class in a while, inducted into our National Honor Society. And it was a wonderful evening for those of you. Many of you were able to attend, and it was a nice evening, a very nice evening. And also our West Geauga High School's Symphonic Band performed on March 7th and 8th at the Ohio Music Educators Association district contest, and received an overall rating of 1. There were 4 judges, and every single judge rated our band as number 1. And actually, I believe, if I recall off the top of my head, there were 30-some bands that performed that day, and only 2 schools received an overall rating of 1. So, that's going to the state contest April 25th. The high school took on March 10th, and the week of March 10th, took the Ohio graduation test, and everything went very smoothly. And now we're on to, as Mr. Palmer talked about briefly a little bit ago, talked about the PART test and Ohio's Next Generation Assessments. And the Ohio's Next Generation Assessments refer to tie tests, which are issued by Ohio and put together by Ohio, and park assessments, which are math and English language arts. And to go back, the tie tests are science and social studies tests. And this week we've begun those tests, and I would say that today we had 2 classes take the exams online, these pilot tests that do not count, and I would have to say they were very successful. There was one glitch this morning, and we were able to overcome that glitch, and it was very nice. I think we used the Chromebooks that we have in the classrooms for all the students taking the assessments, and I think that they went pretty well. And our athletic boosters, West Jog athletic boosters have been busy, and they've been planning some things and working with our athletic department as well as our building and grounds department, Mr. Russo, as well as myself, and they're interested in putting up a 24 by 40 track storage building on the south end of the stadium. And right now, the track houses their equipment in many different areas throughout the high school campus. And this would consolidate it all, and also they have plans to renovate the concession stand on the south end, as well as, the concession stand on the north end of the stadium, which is closer to the middle school. And they also plan on putting a walkway, a path, between the entrance, the main entrance by the high school over to the visiting bleachers, which then would go past that new shed that they have planned. And finally, our lighting in our gym was replaced over spring break last week, and fabulous improvements. It looks great. They were able to complete the work in a very short amount of time, I think a day and a half. They were in there and they were out, and this is an energy savings, new equipment, I should say, that's going to be in place. And one more thing that overwhelmingly, I would have to say that I brought this to the high school staff initially, supporting our students at graduation by attending. And I would have to say we probably have 40 to 50. Now it's expanded to the entire campus, both elementary schools, middle school, and high school. And we have the high school staff wearing gowns and possibly hoods at graduation, and they will be part of the ceremony as well. And again, this is in support and congratulatory for congratulations to all the students. And it's going to be a really nice formal event. We look forward to it, and I extend the offer to you that if you'd like to participate. Most people on stage will be wearing them. I know that the board members generally are on stage handing out diplomas, and I offer that to you, and I do have some forms here. If you'd like to order one, you can. That's all I wanted to.
Thank you.
Very good job. Hopefully, Mr. Bishop, when he saw me stand up and come up, it's like the music at the end of he knows he should be back. A lot of good things going on in the middle school. Just to highlight a couple, obviously, of my notes. We did have our college and career readiness day the week before spring break. We changed what we have traditionally done in terms of a career day with the help of our PTO as well as Dusty Timmons, our guidance counselor. And we added a second half to that day to deal with college and career readiness, specifically giving kids an opportunity to meet with various organizations in terms of what vocation they wish to choose as they leave the high school level, but get them thinking about these ideas as they are still in their middle school years. So that's a wonderful thing. We were also able to house a number of different wonderful events here. We did house the high school musical as well as the after prom flea market, which were both very well attended. And one other thing that we are, as the high school is as well, we will be beginning our park field testing tomorrow. We have about 100 students that will be engaged with our Chromebooks doing the electronic testing. We look forward to modeling just after the high school did this morning and get an idea of what these tests will be like for our young people as we move forward and then take the time tests in the next couple of weeks. So that's it for the middle school.
ELA at the 4th grade level and science and social studies at the 4th and 5th grade level. We also did, past month, Ms. Brewster and I did a after-school presentation to the faculty that participated in the after-school professional development on value added. Some of those. We did have a fun activities plan, a health and fitness expo where we drew in quite a bit of the community members and we had activities, but of course we had a snow day and had to cancel that, so we're going to reschedule. Other than that, we're kind of moving along. So, thank you.
I'm sure. Thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. Just wanted to mention that the 5th graders from Lindsay and Westwood Elementary did an outstanding job at their first band concert. And it always amazes me how two schools can perform in their respective schools, but they come together once and they do an outstanding job. I don't know their secret other than consistent teaching, but congratulations to our band directors for that. Also, over the spring break, we had new drop ceilings put in along with lighting, and that was phase 2. We had already had it done in 4th and 5th grade over the winter holiday, and now 2nd and 3rd grade has been done. So no longer when we look up do we see nails coming through the ceiling, and the acoustics are so much better, and so is the lighting. So I love it when the kids come in, they go, oh, this is really nice. So it's great to hear them notice it and appreciate it. We also have the Kiwanis Pancake Breakfast that took place, and I know there's a lot of community members that participate in that, but it's always great to see all the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, and all the clubs come out, and certainly they appreciate that help, and they do a lot for us. We have our Tropical Fun Fair that is going to be coming up on April 11th from 5:30 to 8:30. And that is on Friday instead of a Saturday, so if you're not doing anything that day, we hope to see you there. We did have our Jungle Book play, and that was a very creative venture. We had over 120 students participate, and it was just an amazing show, and I know many of you came to see it. And I think that's about it. So we appreciate your support